Welcome to Do That Well. I'm your host, Brenda Brown, and with me, my dear friend, Karen Thrall. Today on Do That Well, we're going to talk about intention. Last week, we talked about goals and New Year's resolutions, and a word that kept coming up, and one that I know I was using a lot, was the word intention. And that got Karen and I's wheels turning. We were thinking, well, what is intention? Is there a difference between an intention and a goal? When would one maybe be preferential to the other? Like, let's dig into this. And when I went and actually looked up the dictionary definition of the word intention, the first is an aim or a plan. Okay, so then that leads us to think, well, an intention is a goal. It's another word for a goal, it's an aim or a plan. But the second definition, which was a medical term, was the healing process of a wound. And there I really stopped and I zoned in on the word process. And I thought to myself, okay, think of that, the process. And that was when it clicked that for me, I do view intention as more of the process, the entire journey of something until you get to the goal or an accomplishment. So all of a sudden, this word intention, it starts growing and it has its own life because it's the entire journey. It's the whole process of the goal. It's not just the end goal, the accomplishment. It's the whole thing. And so that is what really sparked our conversation for today on the word intention. And I gave it away a little bit, but the first thing we'll be talking about is how intention really is a process. And then the second thing we're going to focus on is how Karen and I think that intention is something that's best done as a buddy system.
Yeah.
All right,
Yeah.
let's jump in.
Yeah. Okay. Well, the first thing I want to bring up is when you were started to share with me this whole intention as a medical term for the healing of a wound. I thought immediately of the book The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho, and it's been translated into over 100 languages, I believe. And it's about this, I think, Santiago. And he journeys, he has this big dream, this big ambition, wealth, and his journey along the way stopped him, and there were hurdles he had to overcome. And the message was listen to your heart. And that was one of the messages. And so I thought about how healing of a wound, the wholeness, like intention, when you have a goal, it's like the alchemist, every day matters, every moment matters. Your It's a wholeness, it's part of your wholeness, and you're morphing the goal, the end goal. And when every day matters and you take into account your intention every day towards that goal, it's going to create a life of its own. And more times than not, and I can say this in my personal life, I am happier with the end result than I started what I imagined it would be because of the intention, because of the process behind it. So I thought that was really cool. So I'm quite excited about this. And a second thought I had is when you said, in last week's episode, there was only an 88% success rate for people who do New Year's Eve goals. I was like, no, no. Why only 8%? And I think when you and I talked about that, that's why we want to talk about the process and also the buddy system. I think those are two important keys that will help increase that success ratio. So I think this is an important piece of setting goals. So yeah.
Definitely. And I know Karen, you and we've talked, and when we start to think about this idea of intention and the process of the entire journey, it allows you to take the pressure off of having that end goal. And it allows you to reframe the way that you're approaching it so that now the intention, this process, it becomes the how, it becomes the why for the goal. It becomes the how, the steps to get there, because you're not just taking into account the end goal, as I said earlier, but you are thinking about your intention, your process the entire way. So there's going to be all of these other milestones that you're hitting, but if you can keep your intention there, there's this forward momentum.
Yeah, yeah. So, and then that triggered a thought of me about so in NLP, which is neuro linguistic programming, it's all about the mindset, and it's about adjusting the mindset, which adjusts behavior. And one of the most popular presuppositions, belief systems in NLP is every behavior has a positive intention. So that's an NLP philosophy. Every behavior has a positive intention. And what I like about that is you ask yourself, like you think about a goal, what is my positive intention about this goal? Why is this a great goal for me? And then my behavior adjusts to it. So the whole process of going through your intention every day, you're actually morphing your behavior to match it. So like gym, a workout. Again, I use this analogy quite a bit in coaching. You start with a 5-pound weight. Your intention is, if you want to get to maybe a 25, 30-pound weights for your biceps. You want to really strengthen your biceps. Well, you start with 5 pounds and you are morphing and evolving your behavior to match the end goal because your positive intention is to have stronger biceps. So this whole thing about what is our positive intention? What is your positive intention about a goal? And I think that's a really clear thing because then you evolve. You're going to lean in. You're going to adjust yourself. So that this word intention it's got so much value on it. And I love what you said earlier, just a few minutes ago, when you said a goal is the end result, but intention is the day to day leading up to that goal. So it's really important. I think the process and how you're going to get to that goal is really important.
And to piggyback on that as well, you sort of did allude to it earlier. I think that intention, when you're turning your eye to that process, it also allows you to be a little more in the present and in, the moment, so to speak. So I do think that can also help us as far as motivation goes because we're not, only thinking of the goal, or we're not only looking at the past and maybe what we did or did not achieve, but we're really allowing ourselves to, as you said, come with that positive intention to be there.
Yeah. Yeah. And so Corey has coined a phrase for me, and I come up with an idea, and he'll go, "Okay, put a pin in it." And this has been his phrase with me. And what it means is I get an idea, and I go, "We should do." And for an example, like recently, we should do? We should go to Whistler. We should see what it's like in Whistler. And he went, Whistler. I go, yeah. Like, why not? And he goes, okay, put a pin in it. And that it begins the journey of a goal. And what I love about that expression, put a pin in it, is if you visualize, put a pin in your positive intention, your positive intention is, I'm going to put a pin in it and watch it come to life. And goals is the outcome, right? But put a pin in it is the awakening. My intention is to go to Whistler. So my intention now is come to life. I'm going to put a pin in it and let's see what happens. It was really cool is we went and explored Whistler for 5 days to see if we liked it. And we ended up staying for 2 months. And it was just a really great experience. And especially during the COVID season, like we just isolate ourselves in a really amazing little apartment right on the side of the mountain. And we worked remotely, and it was a winter wonderland. So the experience, the experience of that goal was better than we ever imagined it would be. So intention is like, put a pin in it and it comes to life. And it's like, even like, sticky note, put a sticky note on it. Or, I was talking to a client yesterday and she puts sticky notes. So she if something really she has an aha, she puts it on one word, puts it on the computer because she does not want to forget. See, that's a positive intention. I'm intending to fulfill that word on that sticky note, and it's going to be forefront in front of me in my sight. So that intention there's life on it. And I think there's passion associated with it, which there is for goals too, but it makes it more attainable because it puts something in motion, which I think is really cool.
It almost personalizes it in a way. Not to say that a goal isn't personal. Of course, a goal can be personal to you, but there's something about intention that it draws it deeper. It has more behind it. And this is what I feel. This is my opinion, but
Yeah.
but I
Yeah.
feel like it adds a level of depth to that
Mhm.
to that goal. I do like that visual.
Yeah, and what's funny is last episode you were very, um, in a good way, very strong about where you stood. Like you were really clear. I prefer intention over goal. Like I just prefer to say intention, and but look what we're finding out why, and now we're because it's a journey, because it keeps you in the moment, because like even though the words are synonyms. That was when you said the definition was aim and a plan. What other word means aim and a plan? Goal means aim. They're kind of synonyms, but the depth of or the philosophy behind it opens it up more. It creates a really incredible conversation.
Yeah, right. And I do want to go back. I really like the visual that comes with putting a pin in it. I think that is a great visual, and especially if you are going to physically put a pin in it, as you said with your friend that does the sticky
Yeah.
notes. I think that is a really nice way of thinking of intention, something that you're just going to put some thought into, that you're going to come back to, and revisit. So I think
Mhm.
that's a really nice
Yeah.
way of
Yeah.
viewing intention.
And also because then you don't say no. It's not about yes or no. It's let's revisit this. Let's consider this. Let's activate this and see what happens. Let's explore this. And I find like I could have said, let's go to Whistler. No, like it wasn't a yes or no. It was put a pin in it and let's just see what happens. And I think that's the other thing about intention is explore the idea. Don't be so quick to say no to it because, well, it won't work out. It's not reasonable. It's not realistic. How could I possibly get rid of all that and put a pin in it?
Right. Yeah. And it allows you to come back to it, and there's a little less pressure. It's just you're setting your intention. Now, I did want to, before we go into the buddy system, bring up this idea of consistency, because I know as you and I talked, Karen, we talked about how intention can also allow us to find that consistency, which is necessary if you're trying to achieve anything, whether that's a goal or otherwise, right? You do need that consistency because it motivates you. So when you set your intention and you're going along in your process and
I
you know
converted you. I converted you to process.
but then you'll achieve these things along the way, and then that motivates you to keep going. And that again further illustrates this idea that it is the entire process, this entire journey towards the goal. And I think one of the things that can serve as a real life example to ourselves and our audience is this podcast. I mean, when we started out, our goal was, okay, we're going to get one podcast out a week. And that took us a while, but we got there. Extra points if you're watching the video and you get to see my cat. Um, and we got there. We hit this milestone of getting a podcast out a week, but it was that consistency that became a motivator for us and continued
Mhm.
us driving forward.
Mhm.
So it
So
works.
good. Yes. And when you first, also when we were just prepping for this podcast, and you mentioned the word consistent and how Victor, your Victor,
Yes.
my Victor, he's like, hey, I'm my own person. But when Victor was talking to you about the word consistency and how that level of success that's associated with consistency, and then you bring up the podcast, it is a great example because it took us a year, first of all, to have the courage to actually record one. And we were nervous and we were unsure of ourselves, and it took, and then Madison walks into our lives and she says, you're going to have to be consistent. So then that means, is it weekly? Is it once a month? But your audience needs to be reliable. So we're like, wow. So then we're two professionals, both have full-time jobs, and we're like, we're going to do weekly. And then we had to be consistent with when we're going to record, and so all these steps, but it works. Is it messy? Yes. Is the behind the scenes messy? Of course. Is it hard? Yes. And then Dylan walks into our world, my son, and talking about our branding. He says, your brand is not consistent. Now, he didn't say it like that. He was really much nicer about it. But you look at our goal, you look at our intentions, and this word consistency keeps calling us, keeps drawing us in. Remember to be consistent. And there's a part of me that kind of is resistant to consistency because I just want to, free spirit. Let's just go with the flow. But in reality, if it wasn't for consistency, we wouldn't have gotten this far. And we still looking forward to how far we'll go in this next year. So thank you to Victor for bringing up that word.
Yeah, shout out.
Shout out to Victor.
uh, so this actually does bring us pretty perfectly into the next thing that we wanted to talk about, which was the buddy system. Because as we, decided for the intents and purposes of this episode, the buddy system is something that can be a really integral part of intention. And Karen, you and I found that out when we're talking about the podcast right now. And if we didn't have each other as driving forces, we're each other's biggest cheerleaders. Like we had our own buddy system. And I can't say that if I had intended to make a podcast on my own, that I would be where I am now if it had not been for our buddy system.
Pairing with somebody, like you're saying, it is proven you're going to be more successful. It is proven over and over again. So why would we not pair up for a goal and an intention? And a lot of times you'll hear, well, no one wants to do it with me. Nobody wants to do it with me. Well, in the day and age of internet, networking, social media, meetup groups, there is somebody out there who will do it with you. And what I love about you and I, Brenda, I love that you mentioned that we're the buddy system. We're not alike on some things. How we approach the podcast is not the same. Some of the hard talks we have to have. Sometimes we have to prop each other up. Sometimes we have to do the hard truths with each other. Sometimes we're really vulnerable. Sometimes we're so in sync. Many times, most of the time, we're really in sync. But there's a stretching and a pulling and a prodding and a discomfort where we get to turn to each other and really empower each other. And so the base system, like you prop each other up, there is a bond, you empower each other, you're honest. Like we've had to be so honest with each other because we're both novices. We're learning as we go. So we're not experts, but yet we have to have conversations because we believe in each other so much. And so it's buddy systems. I'm all for it. I'm 100% for it.
And I was curious, Karen, and we did talk about this a bit prior to recording today. I think with the buddy system, it can be easy to not come actually as a supporter in the buddy system because we do have this tendency to want to relate with people so much. And if you come to me in our buddy system and you say, well, Brenda, I'm not feeling great about our recording. We've been talking about our podcast, so let's keep it there.
Okay.
And if I come to you and I say, well, yeah, I didn't feel good about the recording either. Now I'm not actually supporting you as a buddy. Now I'm just talking about myself. But I do think that's a very natural reaction to have is you want to commiserate and you want to relate. So how can we come to the buddy system as a supporter and not as a relator?
Yeah. See, I love that because oddly, we both agree that the most important pieces of this podcast is we want to connect with other people and we want to be relatable. So we hope that when we're having conversations, somebody will either agree or disagree or think or whatever. And we want that. And we're looking forward to that growing with our community. Relating, it does take the focus off the person and it puts it on yourself. So when you're in a buddy system, it's their time to shine and you ask them questions. And when they get discouraged, you ask them why they're discouraged, what makes them discouraged, what makes it so challenging, why is it so hard? And you get them talking. And once they're done, if you can say, well, I do have a story, something you said tweak something inside me and I like to tell a story, but it's to empower them. It's not necessarily to relate with them. It's so that you empower them. And the other cool thing about a buddy system is then it's your turn. So yeah, you might be listening to them, but then they'll go, okay, and when I'm done, now it's your turn. And then the spotlight's on you and how you're journeying. So because you both have the same goal, you and I have the same goal. We want to grow and mature and thrive in this podcast culture. And we're starting from ground zero, step one. And we're there for each other. And your mishaps and your challenges won't be mine. And sometimes they will be mine. And for us to really volley that back and forth. So I think, focus on empowering the person in a buddy system. And then it's reciprocated. And then you will feel empowered when it's your turn to be in the spotlight.
Right. That makes sense. So, even though we are, as you said, we're always talking about relating, but with the buddy system, when you've set an intention and you're trying to achieve something, I think that's one of the times that it does break the rules of relating, and you do have to put that hat on and just show up as a encourager, as a supporter, and you have to be curious. You have to have a curiosity for what the other person means, and that's just genuine, right? If you're there as a buddy to truly support that person, you are going to genuinely have that curiosity. You're going to want to hear more from them. You're going to want to encourage them, and I think that's just a very genuine way of showing up for someone.
Mm-hmm. Like you can think of people with weight loss who are their goals for weight loss, and they go, I really want to lose my 10 pounds. So they buddy up with somebody who wants to lose 10 pounds. And there's the highs and lows, or 20, whatever the number is. There's the highs and lows. And you are there to ensure that their negative self-talk does not deflate their intention or their goal. But they feel so safe. They feel so honest because they're with somebody who that's where the relating is. We're both going after the same goal. We're going to prop each other up, and we are not going to have negative self-talk. So you go somewhere where it's safe. So for you and I in this podcast, there's times I'm not pleased with, maybe how I'm talking, but it's been a journey. And so when I come to you going, here is where I would really like to improve my voice, you empower that. We talk about it. You empower, well, how do you see to improve your voice? Well, I'd like to not keep repeating myself. I'd like to be really solid on my statement. And now I'm held accountable. And now you can check in with me and going, well, how are you doing with being very secure and solid in a statement instead of rambling? So this negative self-talk, I tell you, when you're in a buddy system, it disintegrates that negative self-talk because you're forced to replace it with something that's going to really thrive and fuel you.
And I do want to pull out something you said a moment ago as well, because I think it's a really important part of this buddy system. You said that you're going to volley back and forth. And I think that's a really important part, is that there's a time that you're going to give feedback as a buddy, and then there's a time that you don't. So you need to be, I know we've talked about this before, you have to read body language, you have to read, listen to tone, but you need to make sure that you're being sensitive. And remember that there's going to be, you get a turn too, but when it's your turn to be the empower, it again is so important to come with that curiosity and not try to just interject your own thing, and know that your turn is going to come. So it's a back and forth.
Yeah, yeah. The other thing too is feedback. Sometimes feedback, and in coaching, this is really key. Feedback is always to help the person become even better than they are. So critical thinking or critical input, you should be doing. You always do that. When are you going to stop? Like that kind of talking where you're giving feedback that's not constructive. Feedback is always to strengthen so the person's even better. Feedback is, I believe in you so much that I'm willing to say this to you. like even Corey and I, we give each other feedback, but it's our commitment to each other. We give feedback because we believe in each other, and we know we can be even greater than that. So the feedback is always to empower the person because you believe in them. That's the buddy system. You pair up with somebody who believes in your intention and is a cheerleader and a fan of your intention. So I think that's really key as well.
Yeah, definitely. And when you think about it, there is also a little bit of the onus is on you as the person that's wanting to be empowered. I think as well to put it out there, like what kind of feedback you're comfortable receiving, right? Because if you go into something and you have a pain point or something that it's hard for you to take criticism on, I think it would be important for you to come to the table and for me to say, and we'll continue on this scenario of podcast, for me to say, well, Karen, I'm really, something that's a pain point for me is the way that I pronounce my L's. I don't know, that's so random, but we'll use it as an example. And maybe I would need to say something like, so for a while I know that that's something I do, but I don't want to hear that feedback yet. I'm not ready for it. So I think that there's an awareness that you need to have as well when you're working in the buddy system, because your buddy is going to be there with curiosity and trying to encourage you, but they're not going to know if they step onto something maybe you're not ready to handle yet unless you voice that.
Mm-hmm.
There's
Yes.
trust.
And I
There's
think
trust
too,
involved.
yeah, excuse me. And I think also asking why, keep asking why. So if you're going to pair up with somebody and they're going to support you and your intention, you're going to support them intention, and they say something that makes you want to go, that's silly. What do you mean? And oh yeah, I noticed, or anything. It's not for comment. You go, tell me more. That will steer you clear away from giving unnecessary feedback or unnecessary input. Is go back to them and say, so tell me why, or if I use your example, what is it about the L and how can I support you in that? The way you pronounce your L or whatever, and how can I support you in that? What can I do to empower you? Well, you know what? Let's leave it. I just wanted to say what I had to say. Let's just leave it and we'll revisit it in a couple of weeks. But there's always that asking the question of what I can do to support you.
Yeah, the curiosity.
Intention's great. Yeah. Yeah.
It is great. Intention is great. And for the record, I don't have any hangups about the way I say L's. Just so that's clear. Well, we're about reaching the end of our time here today, so we're going to wrap up. But as a quick recap of what we went over today, we talked about the word intention, and we talked about how it is slightly different than a goal and how it is actually the entire process. So it includes the goal. The goal's at the end of your intention, but it's the entire process and the journey on the way to your goal. And then we also spent a lot of time on why we think intention is best served in a buddy system and some of the reasoning behind how buddy systems can really help you in your intention in, further motivating you and bolstering you up to find your success. So that is all we have for today, but we are excited to come back to you next week with a new topic. Thanks for listening. Bye.